morning. Thanks for joining me. It is time for Placemat project number 13. Can you believe it? Some of you have been following since the very first Placemat project that we did quite some time ago, and we are up to 13 versions. Today's going to be 13, and actually it's a twofer. It's kind of a 13 and a 13.5. It's actually the exact same bag, but we're using two different versions of the placemats that are out right now by Pioneer Woman. If you're not familiar with these placemats, they're available at Walmart. I'll have them linked in the description below, as well as an entire playlist of all 13 versions of the different projects that you can make out of these placemats. But today I came up with one that I thought was really fun. So this is version number 13. So this is really cute. It has the folded in sides. It's kind of like a lunch bag style, but this could also be a project bag. It could be a variety of things. And I said there is 13.5, right? Because this is actually the exact same project using a different placemat. It takes two placemats to make one of these projects, but I love how absolutely streamlined this is. It is very crisp. It stands up all by itself. It's got a lot of structure in it, and I really didn't do anything different. There's two placemats to make one project. All you need are the placemats, the handles, and your snap. That's it. There's no extra stabilizer in here or anything else, but it's just the way that this is constructed that it has this very, very structured look, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. So I did these two. So this one, I'll show you this one. This was my prototype, and we actually moved the handles in the video, but I like this placemat as well. This is another Pioneer Woman placemat. These are so cool, and the beauty of it is that they are totally finished inside. You don't have to worry about a lining. You don't have to worry about any raw seams. Everything is totally finished. So I hope you guys are as excited as I am about these placemat bags. I think they're so much fun. I think they're so easy. They're great for beginner sewists. And for those of you who like to embroider, these are perfect for embroidery. These were very, very popular. All the placemat projects have been very popular in the embroidery group. So this is a really fun font that I got from Creative Applique. I absolutely love it. I think it's so cute. It's called Sunshine Poppy. I'll try to remember to link that in the description below as well. But I think these are so fun, aren't they? And I'm going to show you in the video. Like I said, these are assembled exactly the same way, whether you make the smaller one or the larger one. They're assembled the exact same way. I'm going to show you in the video. At the very end, I will show you how to embroider this on a flatbed if you want to do that, as well as I'll just do a real quick shot of doing it on the Ricoma EM1010. I think doing it on a multi-needle is probably pretty self-explanatory. Great to have the Mighty Hoops for a multi-needle, but if you just have a flatbed machine, you can still embroider on these placemats. Very, very easy. So come on, let's get started. All right, let's go over what we need for the placemat project. This is the Pioneer Woman placemat. This is the newest one that they have, or at least the newest one they have at my particular store. This is a 15 by 15 inch square. Traditionally, they've had the rectangles. So this 15 by 15 inch square, it's like this on this side, this on this side. You could use either side you want. That is the one that I used for this. So in order to make this one, you have everything is absolutely finished. You don't have to finish any of your seams on the inside except for your box corners. So that's this one. If you want to make this style out of the bigger ones, all you're going to do is cut this down to 14 by 14. It's going to be slightly smaller than this, about an inch smaller. And the only difference is when you're done, you're going to have to turn it wrong side out and finish this seam that is across the bottom. If you use the square one, that will already be finished for you. But if you don't, this is going to be a raw edge because you had to cut it. And you're going to have to use the serger or a zigzag stitch to finish that seam. So you can make this style with the bigger ones if you want. That's totally up to you. However, if you use the bigger ones and you make this size, it's going to be just like that. It'll be all finished when you're done. So I recommend using this size for this style and the square ones for this style. Totally up to you. Now in the video, we're gonna pull these handles in a little bit. I don't like them out this far. This was my prototype, but we're gonna pull them in just a little bit, so you will notice a slight difference. But I used, for this style, I used the Pioneer Woman placemat like this, and these placemats are available at Walmart, very inexpensive. So there's that style. My Walmart also has this style, which is the one we've used in a lot of the previous quilted placemat projects. I just got a little bit burnt out on this one just because we used it so much in the beginning. So your Walmart may have a different, I think there's one more quilted one out, but mine never has. But go ahead, and you're going to need 2 placemats for each project, whichever one you choose, whichever size you choose, it takes 2 placemats. And then you're going to need your straps. This is just stuff that I had on hand. This is some nylon 1-inch webbing. I'm going to use that for the larger one. For the smaller one, I've got this piece of red cotton webbing. Either one is going to work just fine. If you want to have 2 handles on the smaller one, you can do that. So you might want a little bit more. For the smaller one, the straps are about 16 inches. So even whether you do 1 or 2, you might want 2 16-inch straps, or if you want to do just 1, you can do just 1. So 28-inch on the big ones is what I did, and 16 on the small ones. Other than this, you're just going to need your typical sewing notions, some clips. So other than that, all you're going to need is your typical sewing notions, pins or clips. I like to use the Wonder Clips, your sewing machine, and you're going to want to have your iron ready. Now, as far as those of you who want to embroider, I know you're going to ask, so I will tell you this one is embroidered at about 3.5 inches down from the top. So all I did, let me grab this. All I did was take and decide which square I wanted my embroidery to be, and then I measured halfway this way, measured down 3 inches, and that was the center of my design. 3.5. It's totally up to you, and it depends how big you make your embroidery. If you used this side, you might want to pull it down and make it, you know, more centered in the bag. It's totally up to you. Put it where you want. On this one, I measured 5 inches down for the center of my embroidery, 5 inches down from the center. So again, I just took my placemat, measured in half, measured 5 inches from the top for that halfway mark, and that's where I centered my embroidery. You put it wherever you want. You can wait and do your embroidery at the end of the project. Both bags have plenty of room to get inside, or even on a flatbed. You can turn this one wrong side out and pretty easily put your embroidery afterwards if you want. If you prefer to do it before, go ahead and do your embroidery. Meet me back here and we'll start assembling the bags. Now I will tell you, I'm going to prepare both styles of bags just because the handles go in a little bit different places, but the assembly of both bags goes together exactly the same. So whether you're making the larger one or the smaller one, they're going to go together the same. So once we prep both, I'm only going to make one in the video. So go ahead and do your embroidery if you want. Stop the video, pause it, whatever works, and then meet me back here and we're going to start the assembly. All right, so let's start with the prep for the large one. So the first thing you're going to do is orient your 2 placemats so that they're both going the same direction, assuming you want them the same on the front and the back. So this is going to be the top of my bag on both the front and the back. I'm looking at the pretty side. All right, so I'm going to flip them so they're both the same way, wrong sides together. So these 2 sides are together. This is my top. This is my top. All right. Now, the first thing I did is I went ahead and marked my center point. It is right here on this particular placemat. It's really easy to see because of the way the pattern is. You have this line going right down the center. But if you don't know, fold it in half, stick a straight pin in it, and that's going to establish your center point. All right. Now, for our strap placement, we're going to measure over 3 inches, 1, 2, 3, and 3 inches down. We're going to take our strap. We're going to fold one end under by about 1 inch, and I'm just eyeballing it. I've got a piece of Scotch tape on here, and I'm going to put this right at 3 inches down, 3 inches from my center line. And I just Scotch taped it right there. And I just find this is the easiest way to keep this in place. I know it's unconventional, and then I'm just going to put a clip right there. So take your strap, make sure that it's not twisted. Go over to this side. Again, we're going to fold up by about 1 inch, and I'm just eyeballing it. And we're going to go 3 inches over, 1, 2, 3 from that center, 3 inches down, 1, 2, 3. You're going to line this up right on the 3 inch line, and I'm taping that one down. And I'm going to put a clip in it. And I just find that the Scotch tape makes it a lot easier to keep it straight when I get to the sewing machine. I will stitch across the bottom. Well, you'll see. But it just keeps it from getting cattywampus. All right, now we're going to flip it over and do the same thing on this side. But since we've already got these marked, we can kind of see where the 3 inch away is to make sure that our straps are the same way. So we really just need that 3 inch mark down. Again, we're going to fold this under by 1 inch, 3 inches down. I'm going to put a piece of tape. I'm going to clip it. Same thing on this side, make sure my strap's not twisted. On these nylon straps, if you have fraying, you can take a lighter and just lightly singe the ends. That'll help it from fraying. I'm going to fold this over by 1 inch. Measure down 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. And I'm making it even with this strap behind. But it's also, now let me turn my ruler. We're on the full inch side. 3 inches over from the center. 3 inches down. 1, 2, 3. Oops, that's a half. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Put it right there. There's another piece of tape. And a clip. All right, so that's how you prep the large bag. If you're doing the smaller one, it's very similar. So here is the smaller one. You need to decide if you're using this side as your outside, which side you want to be the top. I'm going to use the teal side so I know they're both the same. So I'm going to flip this one over so they're wrong sides together. I'm going to fold this one in half, mark my center point, and this particular bag is kind of easy to see too because you've got this big X going down the center, so that should be your center mark. All right, we're going to do the same thing except for on this one, we're going to go 2 inches over. Again, I'm going to fold my strap under by 1 inch. I'm going 2 inches from the center, and I'm going to go 2 inches from the top. All right, I'm going to add a clip. Same thing on this side. 2 inches over. Make sure your strap's not twisted. Fold this under. 2 inches. I'm going to take that down, add a clip. Flip it over. Same thing. 1, 2, and I'm lining it up with the one behind it. There we go. So what you're going to do at this point is take it over to the sewing machine. You're going to sew a square box around that 1 inch tab that you folded up, and it doesn't have to be exact. Do a stitch square, and then I put an X in the middle, and stitch your handles down. Once you're done with that, it's going to look like this. I've got little squares with X's sewn through each of them. Yours probably are a little bit neater, trying to work around cameras here. All right, we're going to put right sides together, and I'm making sure those handles are together, and you can see this placemat is significantly smaller, which is not ideal, but we're going to work with it. Now is when you're going to want your clips. So you're going to take your clips and just clip this together on the 3 sides that don't have handles. So now you're going to take it to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch just inside this binding on the 3 sides all the way around. I'm going to use about a 2.5 inch stitch length. And again, you want to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure that you do go all the way up to the very edge when you're starting out. And then again, right inside this binding, right inside the binding, right inside the binding, and up right off the edge. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end. So I am going to speed this up so that you can just see exactly how I'm doing it. But notice that I am using my left hand and I'm kind of pulling at the same time that I'm pushing and keeping everything straight. This is pretty bulky, especially these smaller placemats. They're a little bit thicker than the regular ones. So I find that kind of keeping one hand in front of the fabric and kind of pulling it really helps. And try to stay, I just try to keep my presser foot right along the edge of that binding so that I'm not actually stitching through the binding. I'm stitching just inside of the binding. All right, so I have stitched right along the binding on the 3 sides. The top is open. My handles are sticking out. We're going to focus on the bottom corners right now. I have a 2.5 inch template, but if you don't, just use a ruler and measure 2.5 inches from your seam line. So not from the edge, from the stitching that you just did. You want to measure, this is easier to see. You want to measure 2 inches. Here's my stitch line. So I'm measuring 2 inches over, 2.5 inches over, and 2.5 inches up. Again, if you have a ruler, just measure it like this. 2.5 inches over, 2.5 inches up from your seam line. And then I'm using a fabric marker that erases with the use of an iron. This one's just, I'm doing this because it's very easy for you to see. We just marked out a square. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to measure 2.5 inches from our seam line, 2.5 inches over, 2.5 inches down. So hopefully you can see those squares. All right, so we're going to take a pair of sharp scissors and you're just going to cut. Make sure that you are as precise as possible. Don't overshoot it or it'll mess up your box corners. We're just going to cut that square out. And I recommend using scissors, not a rotary cutter on this step. All right, once you have those corners cut out, we're going to look at the corner like this. You're going to pull the raw corners out. And you're going to line up the seams. So it looks like that. All right, you're going to push, make sure they're totally even. You're going to push one seam left, one seam right. And put a clip. Keeping them totally straight. So it looks like that. You're going to repeat that on this side. Only when you're doing this side, make sure you pay attention to which way you push this seam. So I can see it's going that way. I want to keep it going that way. I'm going to line up those seams. Again, the seam's going that way up here, so we're going to go that way here. The other one's going to go the opposite. And we're going to clip. Okay, now you're going to take it over to the sewing machine. You're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance right down both of these straight edges. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure that you stitch all the way to the edge of the fabric on both sides. When you get to this area, go slow. You might have to hand crank depending on your sewing machine, but you can sew through that. Just go slow, slow down, and if you have to hand crank through this bulky part, go ahead. So again, you can see I've left my clips in. It's a little bit tricky. You do want to use your opposite hand and kind of pull the bulk through if it helps. And then you can see I really slow down as I'm going over that bulky center. I'm going very slow. I'm pulling as I'm stitching, but I do slow down. And like I said, depending on your machine, you might want to literally just turn the hand wheel to get through that center seam. That's the thickest part of the entire bag, is this step right here. But you should be able to sew through it. Just again, slow down. See how I'm using my left hand and kind of pulling my way through it, and then after that it's pretty easy. So when you're done, you're going to have some raw edges here. This is where, if you have a serger, you can go back and serge this edge so that it's nice and finished. If you don't have a serger, just take it back to your sewing machine and put it on a zigzag stitch and zigzag between your seam and the edge of the fabric. I'm going to run mine through the serger. All right, so I went ahead and serged mine on the end. Again, if you don't have a serger, just use a zigzag stitch and zigzag that this is the only place that there is a raw edge in this bag. All right, so now what we're gonna do is turn this right side out. You wanna get in there and push your corners out. Just like so. Once you've got your corners pressed out, what I like to do is take a ruler and measure 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches from the seam line, and you're just going to fold right there. And I'm going to put a clip in. And that should make a straight line right all the way down to the corner of your box. I'm going to put another clip. All right, so I'm just going to double check. I'm still 2.5 inches from that center line. I am. All right, once you have that side done, you're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to measure 2.5 inches, 1, 2.5, and I'm going to fold. I'm going to clip. I'm going to go all the way down to the other end, to the center. Double check that we're still 2.5. Oops. 1, 2.5. 1, 2.5. All right, so we've got 2.5 inch margin from the center line on both sides. What I recommend you do is take it to the sewing or the ironing surface and iron this seam down. Same thing on this side. Iron this seam down. What it's going to do is create that fold right there. So you're going to iron that down and then meet me back here. So once you've ironed it, it's going to look something like this. So again, we've got 2.5 inch width from the center line on both pieces. Now you're going to repeat that on this side. So again, make sure you're nice and squared out here. I'm going to measure 1, 2.5 and fold. right there. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it down to the corner. And then go ahead and iron this side. So now you want to take it over to the sewing machine and you're going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all 4 of these creases. So from here down to your box corner, 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and the end. The same here. Turn it over, start here, and you're stitching this corner together. Start here, down, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the same over here. So you want to do all 4 corners. All right, now this step is optional if you want. You can also do the 1/4 inch seam allowance across the bottom right here. You would do the exact same thing. I like to press it first and then just take it over and sew it. It just gives it a finished edge and it just makes it stand up, I think, a little bit better on both the large and the small bag. So you can go ahead and also stitch that edge, and then all that's left is to install our snaps. All right, so we're pretty much finished. We just need to add the snaps. You can see I went ahead and did the seam along the front and the back. I just think it makes it stand up a little bit better. This automatically comes in now. You've got that nice top. Everything inside is absolutely finished. If you wanted to use this for a lunch tote or something, you could do the iron-on vinyl like we did in the first placemat pouches. I can link that in the video below if you want to see how to do that. But very, very cool. So you have a couple options on snaps. I'm just going to do the cam snaps because that's kind of the theme we've gone with in the various videos. So I know that you guys probably have the set. So mine measures about 8.5 inches. So 4 1/4 is going to be our center point. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I'm going down about, 3/4 of an inch from the binding, where the binding ends. And I'm going to put my awl right through the front layers. I'm going to take one of my cam snap pieces, the piece that looks like a tack, and I'm just going to stick it through that hole. So it's sticking through the back. You're going to take either the male or the female end. You have one of each. It doesn't matter which. I'm going to put that right on top. It looks like that. All right, we're going to take our pliers and you put the black part of the pliers against the part that looks like a tack. And then you just sandwich that in there and squeeze. We've got part 1 on. I also have the table press, but I know a lot of people don't have that. So if you have the table press, it's really, really easy. All right, so I am just kind of pressing through to feel where the next snap goes, just so it's going to line up. Again, we're going to use the awl, go through the other side. Put the other tack on the outside. Sticking through. We're going to take the opposite end. This time it's the male end. It looks like that. And again, the black part goes against the tack. Just sandwich that in there. Give it a squeeze. All right, so then you just want to test your snap, make sure that it's working. And you're all done. So if you want to add embroidery at this point, you still can, whether you have a multi-needle or a flatbed. It works either way. I'm going to use the Sunshine Poppy font from Creative Applique. I think it's so cute, and I will put a link to that in the description below. But I'll show you how to embroider this on the flatbed. I think it's self-explanatory on a multi-needle, but I'll show you how I would do it on the flatbed. So here's a couple that I stitched out on the multi-needle prior to assembly. Again, definitely makes it easier to do your embroidery prior to assembly if you can. But if you don't want to risk it, you want to wait and see how the bag turns out, you can absolutely do it afterwards. And now we'll do it on the Janome 500E flatbed. So I'm going to do this one on the Janome 500E. You can see I'm just making a horizontal line right there using the kind of the crisscross of the design as my measurement. But if you want to measure, you can measure. On the first one I did about 3.5 inches down from the center. It's up to you. I've hooped a piece of tearaway in my hoop, and I've marked my center and horizontal lines. So now that I've got my target point on my bag, this is where our embroidery design is going to be. This is a marker that removes with the heat of an iron, by the way. I'm going to turn the bag wrong side out. And then I'm going to use some of this 505 temporary adhesive. I'm going to spray the tearaway. I'm going to do this off camera. You just need a light spray. That's going to help hold this into place. Try not to spray it near your machines or your camera equipment, etc. So now what I'm going to do is find that target point on the inside of my bag. So right where the bullseye of the target point is, where the center and horizontal lines come, and I'm going to stick a straight pin right through that. And I'm going to line that up with the bullseye point on my hoop. And then I'm going to push this down because that is got that sticky adhesive on it now. It's going to hold it in place. And then I'm going to use my pen and I'm going to go down on my straight line here again. And I'm going to make sure that it's matching that straight line on my hoop. So those 2 points line up. So then I know it's straight on the hoop, and I'm going to check the other end. Again, I stick the pen through it and I can see that the pen is sticking right in that line. So I know this is on here straight. All right, so I'm going to push that down against that sticky adhesive, and then I'm going to use a few pens and just pin it into place. So I'm going to do this on the Janome, which is a flatbed. Mine hooks on the right side. Yours may hook on the left. Most of them hook on the left. But that's why I put the bulk of the bag to my left. Again, mine's going to hook on the machine in the right side. So I'm just going to add a few more pins just to help keep this in place. You want to make sure that your pins are not going to be in your embroidery area. So you can see here how it stitches on the Janome. I am baby setting it. I'm making sure that the fabric on the top layer is not in the way and it's held back. Making sure my handles are out of the way, they're not getting sewn down. You don't want to walk away from it. You want to make sure that you've got everything clipped out of place or held out of place. You can use tape, whatever works for you. But it's not difficult at all. This bag's got a lot of room in it. Again, it's more ideal to put your embroidery on prior to, but it can be done afterwards. So these are the two that we made in today's video. I hope you guys really enjoy these projects. If you make them, please tag me on social media. I love to see these placemat projects. And, you know, they always laugh because everybody says, oh, my Walmart's out of the placemats. And that makes me so happy because I think either there's a lot of tables with placemats, Pioneer Woman placemats, or there's a lot of you making these projects. So I want to think it's the latter. So thanks so much for watching me. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe it, share it. Don't forget to click that bell so that you're notified every time there's a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, never stop making. See ya. Bye-bye. I do have a playlist of all of the placemat pouches 1 through 13 linked in the description below the video. Be sure and check that out. I've also linked all of the products used.